case that was given to me or recommended to me by one of my subscribers, and she said this case had horrified her from the time it happened on. And I know why. It is one of the most horrifying cases I have ever heard of. It is so bad. I can't even imagine being I just can't even imagine. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, so I guess I can't play these both at the same time. I don't understand why. Like, seriously, it's driving me crazy. Hello. So, where do I actually talk into? This one works fine. This one, not so much. Anyway, so I'm hoping to get a better, crisper sound, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, but the case. The case I'm going to do tonight is about Sylvia Likens. I've never heard such a horrifying case in my life. She died at the age of 16 by the hands of no other than her caretaker, that her parents, who were carnival performers, actually trusted. And because of this, she was given over to this family that they trusted to watch over her for $20 a week. Well, when the money did not come in, Miss Gertrude, which was her caretaker's name, and her husband started to take out their frustrations and their money problems on this poor child. Now, and I don't mean just a little bit. They did unthinkable, unspeakable things to her. Everybody downstairs, go downstairs and go. This is how it all started. She was born January 3rd, 1949. She was a wonderful kid. She got great grades. She was very well liked. She was kind. She was giving. Her parents, yes, were carnival showmen, and she was kind of in between she was in between a set of twins. So her parents had the twins that were older and then twins that were younger. Jenny was one of those twins that would kind of be part of her life the entire time. Unfortunately, Jenny, along with the Gertrude's 5 other children and the neighborhood kids, would all participate in the murder of this innocent girl. She was very smart, she was very beautiful, she had long brown curly hair past her shoulders. She had a beautiful body. She had everything going for her. She was very pretty. She and Gertrude, this caregiver, would treat this girl not just like a prisoner, but like a prisoner who had actually committed a crime, and everything that she accused her of doing, she did not do. Now, they did this in Indianapolis. She was actually from Lebanon, Indiana, but this occurred in Indianapolis. So, let's get into it. Before I start, though, if you have any triggers towards children and any crimes committed to children, I would suggest not watching this video at all. Please find another video to watch. As always, true crime is a very sensitive nature, and nobody under the age of 14 should be watching this, and even then, especially for this case, it should be taken into account that this is a very severe case, and even if you're over 14, even then, please, your discretion, and very big discretion, is advised. So, she loved to skate, she loved music, she loved to roughhouse with her brothers. She always took care of her siblings. Matter of fact, when she was a teenager, and could actually work, she would work odd jobs, helping people clean their house and doing laundry, just to help her parents bring money home for her. Maya. So, in August, it is so sad. She would state, quote, after not getting paid $20 by her parents, she would state, quote, well, I took care of you two little bitches for a week, unquote. They accused them of eating too much food. By mid-August 1965, Gertrude began focusing all of her abuse onto poor Sylvia. And Sylvia, being quiet and kind of timid and not wanting to, eat leftovers, spoiled food, her own vomit. When she ate spoiled food, she would make her eat it. She would make her not or go for days without drinking or eating anything, and just started to not only have her kids abuse her, but also have the neighborhood kids abuse her, and they would come over. So now the neighborhood kids are all in on this as well. And she was subject to humiliation when she started going out with boys, which she was almost 17 years old, so she would have dates or whatever. Gertrude would actually insinuate that she was having sex with boys and that she was a prostitute, that this could not be tolerated, so she'd have to beat her again and again with not just small objects, but very, very large objects. She claimed to have a boyfriend in Long Beach, and Gertrude wanted to know what she had done with him, and Sylvia didn't even know what that meant. She's like, like, well, I went to the movies, we went skating, I don't know, we went to the beach, you know, I got cold, and, you know, he wrapped me up in a blanket, and immediately Gertrude started yelling, look at your stomach, you're getting big because you're pregnant, because you're a whore and all this, you're just such a bad person. I mean, she's insinuating that she's prostituting herself out to all these boys, which is ridiculous. You know, Paula, because Gertrude's son was also jealous of Likens' appearance. They would kick Likens in the genitals over and over and over again. The boys they'd make her shove bottles in her privates, in front, not just behind closed doors, like in front of all the neighborhood kids, naked on the floor. It was disgusting. I mean, her own children beat Likens. Even her sister was forced to beat her, Jenny, one of the twins. And they would run into their other twin, or the other set of twins, Diana, one of them, and they even told her about the abuse that was going on, but she did not believe them. And when the one time her parents did come to visit in August, they had covered her up with, you know, pretty good, and the girls did not dare mention anything because they knew they couldn't go on the road with their parents, so they did not want to be subject to that kind of abuse, or even worse. So she had just continued to humiliate her, sexually humiliate her, whipping her, starving her, tying her, beating her with a police belt. Just tying her down in the basement, naked, without any clothes, without any food, and just leaving her there. While the siblings also did those things. And of course, Likens' siblings were in fear of their own lives, so they never told their parents what was going on. And that was a problem because she really didn't have an ally here. I mean, Jenny sort of, but not really. And Diana thought that the girls were kind of making it up, so she didn't tell her parents. Gertrude would grab Likens' hair, repeatedly banging her head against the bath to revive her, after putting her in boiling hot water, after bludgeoning and choking her to the point where she would pass out, and then she would bang her head against the bed to revive her whenever she fainted. I mean, this is a sick person. This girl, although I want to say one thing, this girl was a survivor. I can't believe she lived as long as she did. I mean, 3 months doesn't seem like that long, but what she endured with constantly being whipped and beaten with, I mean, those metal long, thick bars. She'd be beaten until they would go to a 90-degree angle across the head, across the body, and she just was starved to death. She was forced to eat and then could not eat it. It got so bad that she actually had started defecating herself and urinating on herself, and she would be even punished more. She would once had a dirty diaper from one of Gertrude's younger children shoved in her face and made to eat it. When the Vermillions who lived next door, they came to visit and said that the girl looked really meek and very weak. She looked like she was zombified. Nevertheless, the Vermillions never reported this to police. I don't know why. I really don't. So, October 1st, Diana Shoemaker, their other twin sister, discovered that her sisters were temporarily residing at the Baniszewski residence. She visited the property in an attempt to initiate regular contact. However, Gertrude kicked her out, telling her that Sylvia was just a troublemaker and that she would would run away all the time, and she wasn't even going to school anymore. And Jenny whispered and said, "What is up with Sylvia's welfare? What is going on?" And Jenny goes, "I cannot tell you because I will get in trouble, and I don't want to get in trouble." So due to the increase in the frequency and brutality of the nature and torture of the crimes mistreating Likens was subject, she gradually became, as I said, incontinent. She was denied access to the bathroom, being forced to wet herself, and she threw her in the basement, tied her up because she wet herself. But she was kept naked, rarely fed, and deprived of water. Occasionally she was tied to the railing of the basement stairs with her feet barely touching the ground. So she was basically hanging there for hours and hours, sometimes days. Likens was attacked and belittled by Gertrude's kids, taking a knife to her and saying, fight back, and she's like, I don't know how to fight. So she started to scour her skin really hard. Physical and mental torment such as this was occasionally ceased when they wanted to watch their favorite television shows. Isn't that nice? Scalding water, rubbing salt into her rooms, into her wounds, gagging her. Okay, now this is really sick. Gagging her while the other children in the neighborhood would lacerate her and whip her, and then put her in a scalding hot bath, and then rub salt into her wounds. And then again, putting dirty diapers in her mouth, and then giving her half a glass of water to drink and saying that is it for the entire day. She was forced to insert a glass of Coca-Cola bottle into her vagina in the presence of the children, before Gertrude ordered her into the basement. So then they were talking about tattooing upstairs. They bring Sylvia into the living room and said, "Do you know anything about tattooing?" Which Sylvia replied, "Not really." And she said, "You branded my children, so I'm going to brand you." And she wrote, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it." Not just wrote, but branded it into her, carving the words, I just want to repeat that, carving with a hot needle into her abdomen. When Gertrude was unable to finish branding, she instructed one of the neighbor kids to do it, this 14-year-old Richard Dean Hobbs, to finish etching the words Likens flesh as she took Jenny to a nearby grocery store. She clenched her teeth and moaned. They had attempted to burn an S into her under her left breast, although they applied one section of the loop backwards, and the deep scar would resemble the number 3. Gertrude later taunted Likens by claiming she would never be able to marry. Quote, "Sylvia, what are you going to do now? You can't get married now. What are you going to do?" Weeping, Likens replied, quote, "I guess there's nothing I can do," unquote. So later that day, Likens was forced to display the carving to the entire neighborhood children that she was a prostitute. She beat her, particularly in the stomach. On October 25th, Likens attempted to escape from the basement, but because they're gonna take her now to the green forest, and let her die. And she was so extremely dehydrated and malnourished she couldn't even run to the door. Gertrude then dragged Likens back into the basement. That evening, Likens desperately attempted to alert the neighbors by screaming and hitting the walls with a spade. And actually, the neighbor did account this, that she said that she did hear this, but unfortunately, it stopped at 3 a.m. So she just figured the nuisance would go away, and that she just would, not call the police, which was a big mistake. By the morning of October 26th, repeatedly moaning and delirious mumbling, Paula asked her to recite the English alphabet, and she could not do it. She could get A, B, C, and D, and that is it. Just the 4 letters. Then they started to make fun of her more and more, pushing her around. And she would raise herself off the ground, I guess, by her neck. Then she said Paula verbally threatened her and said she was going to long jump her onto her stomach. And then as she did this, she defecated herself. Likens defecated herself. Gertrude then ordered her to clean herself up. That afternoon, several of the Likens' other tormentors gathered in the basement, jerkingly moved her arms in an apparent attempt to point at the faces of the tormentors she could recognize, making statements such as, "You're Ricky" and "You're Gertie," before Gertrude tersely shouted, "Shut up, you know who I am." Minutes later, Likens unsuccessfully attempted to bite into a rotten pear she had been given to eat, stating she could feel the loosening of her teeth, which her sister Jenny said, "Remember, you got your front tooth knocked out when you were 7, but that's not what she felt. She felt all her teeth coming loose." An attempt to wash Likens. John and Gertrude, they were laughing, spraying her with the garden hose outside. Literally just spraying this tiny little thing. I mean, she tried to exit the basement again, but collapsed in response as ever. Gertrude stamped on Likens' head over and over and over again, and then staring at it for several moments. Shortly after 5:30 p.m., Richard Hobbs, returning to the residence, immediately proceeded to the basement. He slipped on the wet basement stairs and fell heavily onto the floor of the basement. He confronted with the sight of Stephanie crying and cuddling Likens' emaciated and lacerated body after she had been ordered by her mother to clean Sylvia. Stephanie and Richard then decided to give Likens a warm soapy bath and dress her in new clothes. But that only wish, she finally muttered as she was dying, "I wish my daddy was here." "Shirley," exclaimed Stephanie. Stephanie turned to the younger sister Shirley, exclaiming, "Oh, she'll be all right." When Stephanie realized that Likens was not breathing, she attempted to apply mouth-to-mouth. As Gertrude repeatedly shouted to the children that Likens was faking her death, "She's faking it, she's faking it, she's faking it," over and over and over again, so nasty. She actually was kicking her as she was doing this. The girl was already dead. So at 6:30, she called the police and told the officers. Now, Gertrude had made Likens write this letter saying that she had run away and all the horrible things she had done. She became a prostitute and all this stuff. And so she had this letter in Likens' handwriting that was dictated by Gertrude. And it was a horrible letter. She said that she had been running away and she was Gertrude was the hero. She was trying to clean her up with alcohol, but she to no avail. And she was trying to quote-unquote doctor, the child for an hour prior to her death, having applied rubbing alcohol. She had Likens run away again and again, and from her home with several teenage boys before returning to her house earlier that afternoon, bare-breasted and clutching the note. No, she wasn't running away with anybody, I promise you. Paula said, this is one of Gertrude's children. Paula said, Likens' death was meant to happen, then glanced in Jenny's direction and calmly stated, quote, "If you want to live with us, Jenny will treat you like our own sister. So better shut up or give up." But as previously instructed by Gertrude, Jenny Likens recited the rehearsed version of events to Likens' death to police before whispering to the officers, quote, "You get me out of here and I'll tell you everything," unquote. The format false statement provided by Jenny Likens prompted police to arrest Gertrude, Paula, Stephanie, and John on suspicion of Likens' murder within hours of discovering of the body. The same day, Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs were also arrested and charged with the same offenses. Good for them. Thank God. This poor girl, she did nothing wrong. These kids do nothing wrong. They just somehow become, out of jealousy or something, they become the target of adult hatred for themselves. They hate themselves. That's why you beat somebody else or hurt somebody else, because you hate yourself. No other reason. Yes, Gertrude had been in a few abusive relationships, and her dad left when she was young, but it was nothing like so serious that she had to do this to this girl. She humiliated her over and over again. It wasn't just that she killed her, it was that she brought the entire neighborhood to watch her, put things inside of her and just She was, of course, sentenced to life in prison, first without the possibility of parole. However, in 1986, she was released. I know it wasn't for being a good mother or caretaker. She would burn the child with cigarettes, burn her with hot water, scalding water, burn her with the iron, burn her with anything she could think of. She beat her with a police belt. She beat her with sticks with huge wooden paddles. She beat her with her foot. She bashed her head in. She starved her. She did everything she could. She humiliated her. This woman is so disgusting. I cannot believe she was not put to death. She said, quote, "Most of the time I use my fist," unquote, to abuse her. They had broken her jaw and inflicting other acts of brutality, including pushing her down the stairs into the basement 2 or